We are seeing a significant ratcheting up of tensions in the region and, of course, violence in Rafah over the last 24 hours. We're seeing the response from the international community. Just walk us through the developments.
So we have 45 dead is the last count, but Israel is simultaneously saying that that airstrike took out 2 senior Hamas officials. So I think really the argument here comes down to, did it cross the red lines laid out by Biden? What implications might that have for further delays or a pause in the military shipments from the US to Israel? And I think ultimately that's where the leverage the international community has, because it's all very well to come out and condemn it and to send out a tweet, and that's great for your domestic audience, but it doesn't actually change anything on the ground. Simultaneously, you've got an Israeli government that is largely being led by a very sort of ultra-nationalistic ideology, and they're not really going to be paying any attention whatsoever to what the French president is tweeting or anyone else is saying. It's just not a concern to them.
Let me ask you, the backdrop is, you mentioned the leverage of the international community. ICJ ruling came out on Friday and essentially warned Israel to stop its military operation in Rafah. That didn't happen over the weekend. Why is it the case that Israel's just not listening?
Well, number one, the ICJ has no power of enforcement, which is rather tricky. Again, you can put out as many rulings as you like. If you have no way of enforcing it, it's kind of worthless. Also, Israel interpreted it in a very peculiar way. They interpreted that language as saying you've got to avoid civilian deaths. Now, it is then rather embarrassing several days later where you have a great many civilian deaths, albeit, again, they're justifying it to some extent, even though they called it a tragic mistake. They did say they were going after Hamas leaders. So again, yes, the pressure is building and so on, but does it necessarily change course or the course of things in Israel in terms of the Israeli decision-making? Probably a little, but maybe not enough to stop it.
I thought it was notable that in the afternoon yesterday, the Prime Minister Netanyahu came out and said that it was, quote, a tragic mistake that they're looking to investigate. But I do wonder whether internally, within Israel, public opinion has started to shift and is moving against the continuation of this war.
I mean, I think yes, but for different reasons. In other words, I think the focus now, again, once more, is back on the hostages. And we don't know exactly how many are left, probably in the order of around 100, something like that. But also, I think, what comes next? What is the future? They find themselves in a very precarious position internationally. And I think a lot of the Israeli public have found it quite difficult to absorb that in terms of how the rest of the world now views them. They started off October the 7th with a great tragedy, and then in the ensuing months, the war has really turned things around, and I think that makes it very difficult for them to see what is the future. What does potentially a Palestinian state look like? Should it exist at all? Is it even a feasible outcome?
Yeah.